Hey guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I'm doing Comic Uno's Best Comics of the Week, and this is the show where I review all the comics I've read this week in one show. We go least favorite to best pick of the week and everything in between. And at the end of the video, we talk about the viewer's pick of the week, so in the comments below, let me know your pick of the week. Now, last week I didn't have an episode, but I was on my comic book podcast where I talked about my top 5 and favorite books, so I'll have a link somewhere on the video so you guys could go check that out. And also I do have a Kickstarter going on, Witches of Oz. So if you're a fan of Wizard of Oz, it's connected to our Ever Afterverse of Beast and Snow and Nightmare in Wonderland. But you don't need to read those series to fully enjoy this. We're finally getting to see Glinda and the Wicked Witch fall in love. It's a really fun series and we're really proud of it. It's already funded, so you're guaranteed to get the book as well. But let's jump into this week's books. I had about 10 books. No huge titles, a lot of like issue 2s and 10s, but there were some solid books. Now, number 10 for me was I Heart Skull Crushers issue 2, a book I was expecting to honestly like a lot more. I'm a fan of this writer, and also I like sports stories, but this is a very, honestly the best way I could put it, anime series. It feels very, very hyper. And not every anime series is a hyper series, but it just kind of reminded me of the big cast, the ensembles. And honestly, it didn't even remind me of sports stories of animes. It reminded me more of just fantastical series and more of the post-apocalyptic story, because that is more the visuals that they are trying to take. And honestly, there wasn't as many sports elements in this one, which I was a bit disappointed with. And also, again, what I've added before is that I feel like there was just so many characters. It was hard to follow. It was a lot of dialogue, and I just couldn't get into this one. I probably will not get the next issue, even though I thought issue 1 was a little bit stronger than this, but it kind of shows you the direction it's going, and it just didn't hook me. So overall, giving that 2 stars, and that is number 10. Moving on to number 9, another book I think I might drop, and that is Ultimate Black Panther issue 3. And, you know, I gave this one an honest shot. I like Black Panther from the movies. I've never really followed the comics that much. This one, I feel like if you're a Black Panther fan already, you're getting a lot of stuff. There's elements that are familiar from those comics, but as a new reader, there's not that hook. It's not like, oh my god, I can't wait for that next issue, like maybe an Ultimate Spiderman. And, you know, again, I continue to say it. I think Black Panther fans are already going to enjoy this, but I think the Ultimate Universe is really about bringing in the new fan. But the artwork was really solid for this one. I just don't know if it's giving me quite enough to follow it again. And I thought Storm would be in this issue a little bit more than she was. And even the cliffhanger, it's like, look, there's these promising things that are going to happen, but it felt a little bit too vague to me. So overall, giving that 2.5 stars, and that is number 9. Moving on to number 8. A book I will not drop, but I have not been able to get into, and that's Spider-Woman issue 6. There's something that feels to be missing here. There's just something that's not connecting to me, like some of the previous volumes. And I like Jessica already, but it just always feels like every issue is just touching the surface. This issue in particular is once again just Jessica saying, I miss my son. I'm seeing elements in the world that reminds me of my son. And now I'm going to fight Star, a character that was introduced a couple of years ago. Maybe she's a cult fan favorite, but I kind of forgot who she was. It's like, I think she's in Captain Marvel. And they give you enough nods here. We were like, okay, I get the gist of what that character is, but it feels like too much of a one and done. It just doesn't feel like it's progressing the story and feel as serialized as I want this comic to be, and more of a gut punch that I want this comic to be. Again, I like Jessica a lot, so I really, really want to stick with it, but I don't know how long this is going to stay on my pull list. So that is number 8 for me. Moving on to number 7, this got a little lower for me, and that is Titans issue 10. This issue in particular focused a lot on Raven. I like the idea of this kind of evil Raven. I'm sure seen it before with the character. I feel like there's times where it gets a little confusing because she's interacting with the team, pretending to be good, and then you get to see these evil elements. I'm like, all right, so who's the real Raven, who's not? And then you get a little bit more of Trigon, whom I've never been that interested in, but I like that there's these family elements with Raven that I think can go somewhere. The rest of it is a lot of the familiar territory we've already explored, with Beast Boy not being liked after Beast World, and this one just didn't hit as much as previous issues for this arc, but the art was really, really out of this world, and I think helped bring this issue a little higher for me. So giving that 3 stars, and that is number 7. Moving on to number 6, and that is the Spectacular Spider-Man issue 2. This is an interesting series because I feel like there's a lot of characters, but for the most part, I know what they're up to, right? It's like, okay, there's this romance going on, but there's something up. Maybe the villain's doing something with that. There's another romance going on over there, and then you have like Miles and Peter in the mix of it. They're trying to build like this community, which I kind of like. On the flip side, there is a lot of elements and threads you kind of have to follow, which doesn't always come together and leaves you sometimes a little confused. Again, a good example was the love triangle that's going on, and like, oh, what's happening there? More not in a mysterious way, and a more of like, I'm a little confused of why she was acting one way in this part, and then another way she's acting, again, another in a different light. I like the artwork a lot. Obviously, Humberto Ramos, we're used to his art for Spider-Man, so it just feels very familiar, and I think it helps with a very big cast. He's usually really good at just putting a lot on the page without it feeling like too much. So overall, I gave this 3.5 stars. I'm enjoying it. I like the world it's building, and I'm curious to see when it becomes a bit more cohesive and how I'll feel about that. So that is number 6, I believe. Moving on to number 5, which is J. Garrick, The Flash, issue 6. This is the last issue. It's honestly your kind of run-of-the-mill superhero story. Jay and his daughter gets kidnapped. They defeat the villain, or I'll say the daughter gets kidnapped. Jay saved the daughter. The daughter's a key to something else, and by the end you're like, is Jay gonna die? And then he doesn't, and they celebrate the family and their loved ones. So yeah, it's a pretty run-of-the-mill issue, but there's a lot of heart to it and a lot of background of the Flashes. So I enjoyed the monologue. I enjoyed just seeing the characters interact, even if the plot wasn't, the thickest in the world. And, the art I thought was just okay. I think it could have been a little stronger. It's very cartoony, but I enjoyed this issue. So I'm going to give that 3.5 stars, and I hope to see more from Jeremy Adams with The Flash because I enjoy his voice on it. Moving on to number 4, which is Superman issue 13. This is the continuation of House of Brainiac, which I've honestly been pleasantly surprised with both DC events. Titans, the Beast World stuff was very consistent, felt like it bled into other stories and actually is being affected in the Titans run. And now same thing with Superman. It feels much bigger than just your average Superman story, and there's a lot of great character moments happening here. Even this issue where I thought was going to be very Lobo heavy, you get enough Lobo if you're a fan, but you also get the other superheroes and the other people that are trapped by Brainiac and where their story is going. And it's honestly super interesting because you want to see, like, okay, how did they defeat Brainiac? Can they defeat Brainiac? How's Lex connected to this? How is his daughter connected to this? With some superb artwork. I like that it has this brightness, but also has a darker feel all at the same time. So overall, I've been really enjoying this arc, and I think this was a pretty solid part 2. So giving that 3.5 stars, and if you're a Lobo fan, you might give it even higher. Moving on to number 3, which is the finale of Kill Your Darlings. I really like this book. I will say I think I enjoyed the first 2 acts a little bit more than the last act because there was a lot of explaining of who the villain is, and I wanted to see more from the main characters, but I think this one tries to fit as much as it can for a final story. You have the big battle, which the artwork is literally out of this world, especially for this more fantastical battle. That is definitely the jaw-dropping moment of this issue. And then you do get some explainy stuff between the villain and our main character. You get the obvious, she ends up with the guy story, but I like the ending about happily ever afters and her relationship with her mom. I kind of wish we lived there a little bit longer in this issue, but for a finale, I like the whole overall series. I enjoyed these characters. Again, I love the artwork, and I hope to see more from this creative team, if not more from this series, because I think there's even more to tell, honestly, because there's a lot of little moments in the end where like, okay, so what happens to that other world? Like, what happens to them now that they're parents? So there's just a lot of things I think they can explore, which is a great way to end your series. So giving that 3.5 stars, and that's number 3. Moving on to number 2, and that is Nightwing, issue 113. A really good celebration of 300 issues of Nightwing, and what I loved is that there were not multiple stories. It is just one continuous story about Dick Grayson's birthday, his friends and family celebrating him, and honestly, there's a lot of cool threads of, if you've been reading Nightwing from the beginning with Tom Taylor's run, that you get to see play through, like Alfred benefit fundraiser thing. It's not a fundraiser, I forget the word they use, but this Alfred thing that he's been doing for the city. You get the mayor sister. You obviously get a lot from Barbara and Nightwing's relationship. You get to see Nightwing play as Oracle for a little while, and then you even get a Martha Wolfman little cameo here. So I feel like it was a cool celebration. Nightwing is a very easy one and done. Artwork is a little cartoonier than you expect for Nightwing, but and they've utilized this artist before, and I usually really like this artist. It's just from what I'm used to from this run, it was a little cartoonier. But I really thought it was a solid issue. If you enjoy this character, I think there's some interesting character moments you're gonna like. So giving that 4 stars, and that is number 2. Moving on to my number 1, I've been loving this series, and I'm not a huge Wonder Woman fan, but I'm becoming one, and that's Wonder Woman issue 8. This is just a superb comic in the way it's laid out and just also the story it tells. So this whole issue is Wonder Woman being captured by the lasso of lies. So you kind of have that conflict, and she's in this weird 1950s world that's still present, and she's being not treated very well by Steve, this version of Steve, and she's trying to break out of the lies, and she's trying to be like, okay, this is my real life. This is what the lasso is. There's actually this really cool, honestly, mythos building between the lassos, because you have this version of the lie lasso and then obviously the lasso that she has. Also, the art is just so gritty, and the emotion, the atmosphere it builds is so well done, and just works so well with Tom King's style of writing. And I just love that every issue is just giving you so much something different, where you don't even know what the next issue is going to bring, but you know it's going to continue the story, and you know that it's somehow going to place to this bigger Wonder Woman world. And I love seeing the Wonder Girls. That was fun too. So I just had a really good time with this one. Giving that 4.5 stars. Let me know in the comments below what your pick of the week was. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. I would have a viewer's pick of the week, but we didn't have a show last week. But let me know in the comments below your pick of the week. Also, here's a QR code for the current Kickstarter, Witches of Oz. Hopefully you guys could go check it out. This is Comic Uno. I'll see you guys in the next one.